Great. Well, hi, everybody, and thank you for coming to our talk. Our industry is one that is inherently collaborative. We're using open source tools. We read blog posts. We geek out about Sandy Metz together. We learn about JITs as we wonder why the heck Aaron Patterson is wearing giant green screen gloves on the stage in Portland. And we lovingly roast one another on Stack Overflow for asking questions that are too off topic or something. And many of us start our careers with onboarding buddies or lots of pairing or maybe that one senior engineer that everybody goes to for questions. And over time, we gradually, or maybe way too quickly, find ourselves transitioning to mentors. And even though we're constantly working with and learning from one another, there often aren't many built-in processes to help us develop those mentor or mentee skills. There aren't code reviews or retrospectives, style guides or linters, and that is exactly why we're here today.
Hey folks, I'm Billy. I'm a professional mentee in this mentor-mentee relationship. I started coding about 2 years ago and immediately came to a Rails conference where I was lucky enough to be in the scholarship program. And my mentor, Andy over here, took me under his wing and we really built a relationship, a mentee and mentor relationship. Just a little bit about me. You can usually find me sitting next to my desk at home during the workday with a collection of half-finished different types of drinks. My toxic work trait is that I frequently respond quickly to Slacks, but then I also quickly edit those Slack messages, so watch out. And here's Andy. Andy will introduce himself.
Hey everybody, my name is Andy Andrea, and I've been working with Ruby and Rails since the start of my career in 2014. I'm based not too far away in Durham, North Carolina, after growing up in Wisconsin, which I used to think was the coldest place on the planet until I found this room. And I'm currently working, thank you, for a Boston-based ed tech company called Panorama Education, absolutely wonderful company. And in addition to having the good fortune of being mentored by so many wonderful, talented people over the course of my career, I've in turn acted as a mentor, first at a local hackathon called Pearl Hacks, and later on for organizations like Code the Dream, the Turing School of Software and Design, and, as Billy mentioned, the RailsConf Scholars and Guides program. Now, we believe that effective mentoring relationships are inherently bidirectional and mutually beneficial. So we're not just going to cover how to be a good mentor or a mentee, but both. We're going to be looking at some tools and techniques for leveling up those skills through the lens of 3 different problems. One that's commonly faced by mentees, one commonly faced by mentors, and one that's common to both roles. And we will try to leave time for questions at the end. Even if we run short on time, we'll just kind of linger up here, and we'll have all of our slides with all of our sources available on Slack. So feel free to sit back, relax, and call gc.start, because let me tell you, our jokes are total garbage.
All right, so let's introduce the cast. So first up, we've got a junior developer named Owen. So Owen was a recent grad. Actually, before I even go into this, let me just put the disclaimer out there that none of these are real stories. My manager's in the audience right now, and he gave me the disclaimer to make sure you don't talk about us like that. So this is Owen. Owen is a recent grad from a front-end boot camp. He's a new employee, and he's starting at our fictional company, RBs. Next up, we've got Claire. Claire is a recent grad from a CS program, used Python, and covered numbers, databases, all that good stuff. Also a new employee at our fictional company, RBs.
Meanwhile, our first mentor is a senior developer named Keisha, who joined the company a few years ago. She has some great experience in the industry, working at a previous Ruby consultancy, so they were known for having a bunch of apps. I apologize in advance for anyone that isn't familiar with American chain restaurants, because we're going to have some great puns for you. And Keisha used to work at Ruby Today. Don't look too close at that O. Also, don't hire me for my Photoshop skills. Next up, we have Simu, another senior developer. Similar to Keisha, he's got a bunch of years of experience in the industry. But unlike Keisha, he worked at a different company known for delivering things really, really quickly. And that company was called Jemmy Johns. And naturally, as Billy mentioned, all 4 of our fictional employees work at another company, Arby's. Thank you for the groan. Silly puns aside, it is worth noting that in this case, our mentees have similar amounts of experience to one another. Our mentees are the same. Mentees are a little bit more junior, mentors are more senior. That's not going to be the case in the real world in every situation. And so the things in our talk should apply for cases where you maybe have a more senior mentee, a more junior mentor, etc.
All right, so let's talk about the first potential problem that we have when we come into mentoring. It's the under-mentoring problem. So what can lead to under-mentoring? Let's say Arby's doesn't have a formal mentoring program. Let's start with that. Let's say Simu is busy. He's got deadlines, he's got a big project push, he's frequently in meetings with product managers and trying to push out code and trying to work with QA to get that out. Simu recognizes that Claire is a new employee and invites her into a couple of these meetings. Now, he can't give Claire all of the time that Claire needs, and there's no formal mentorship program at Arby's to really boot it up. Let's go switch gears to our other mentor, Keisha. So Keisha is attempting to be a mentor to Owen. Owen is hired because he has some front-end experience, and the managers hope he will add a little bit of front-end spice to one of their teams. Now, Keisha has no front-end experience, but a lot of experience in general. So Keisha's trying to set Owen up, and they're trying to basically build her up, but it's not as easy as that seems because of a couple facts there that we brought up. So in our example, it's clear to see that there's a lack of mentorship. So with that, there's possible ways that Owen and Claire can cope. And they're smart people. They're going to try and cope. They're going to read documentation. They're going to, look at code, maybe without business domain knowledge, or maybe they'll try to find some business domain knowledge. Maybe they'll set up meetings with people to get that knowledge, but it's going to be slow. And they're going to be given access to public channels to ask questions, but they're new. They don't know what they're doing. They're afraid of looking stupid. They may not ask direct questions in those public channels. And they also may not, they may just be afraid to really get a response, or they may not even get a response. So Arby's could benefit from a more formal mentorship program. In this situation, Keisha sees this and she wants this. And so she brings a case to management. Now let's talk about what that case Keisha can bring to management looks like. So let's show the numbers to management. Management wants to know how it really benefits the company. And we've collected a few numbers about mentorship programs in general that support the case. So our first statistic is retention. So retention for mentors or mentees is 72%, and it's 69% for mentors. You're like, oh, wow, 70%, that's great. 69%, oh, man, that's still not 100%. But compare it to 49% for non-participants. You're going to increase retention. And for those that don't know, retention equates directly to dollars. It also does something pretty cool. It increases minority representation in management by 9 to 24%. And promotion is boosted by 15 to 38%. This is a big statistic. It also equates to the bottom line, and it equates to the numbers, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Finally, it increases happiness. Job satisfaction, happiness, 91% of employees with a mentor reported job satisfaction. That's pretty significant. And it also has better year-on-year profits. So 43% worse performance from companies without that mentorship program. And that's in the Fortune 500 companies. So maybe you put a commit out like this. This could be an idea. Let's reduce high turnover. Let's increase happiness. Let's increase diversity. And also maybe your manager comes back and says, I prefer how we've been doing it. And let's hope that's not the case, but you can still put the case out there. So even with those numbers, it's still hard to gain support for mentorship. We got to start small. We've got to build support. And starting small can look like just introducing it at a retro conversation. Introduce it in a way that's like, oh, there's a problem that we can solve that's pretty immediate. Let's bring up mentorship. It doesn't have to be formal right away. Let's start small. It can be informal. And Andy is going to get into some informal mentorship talks next. Finally, you can also look out for business key-wide metrics. Now, if your company has a push to increase retention rates, why not bring up mentorship? It directly relates to that. Let's go back to what starting small looks like and what that informal mentorship looks like.
So this might be a good time to mention what exactly mentorship is. But we're not gonna. The traditional definition of mentorship is often involving a junior employee and a senior employee, a formal relationship that's somewhat long-term. And I do think that there's a lot of value in those relationships. I've personally benefited from those relationships quite a bit. But if we stick with a definition that's too narrow, that reduces the potential impact that we can have on one another, reduces the ways in which we can help each other out. To me, it also makes the idea of mentoring a lot more daunting if you think of it as this huge, formal, long-term thing that only senior developers do. And that means if you don't start mentoring until you're a senior, that means that you've given up tons of years that you could potentially be practicing. So in that spirit, we're going to look at a few less traditional mentoring paradigms. First off is what's called flash mentoring, and this is just another term for short-term mentoring. So I mentioned earlier that I volunteered at a hackathon. It was a day long, and it was over and done with. That was flash mentoring. And this could be as small as a single ticket, a single method. Nothing is too big or too small. And if you want to get started with flash mentoring in an environment that has low access to mentors, potentially you can use GitBlame or other related tools to see who has worked on the code that you're currently working with. And try scheduling a one-on-one with them where you can ask the who, what, when, where, why about that code, or even just get a little bit more informal documentation. Also, if you find out that anyone has had a little bit of a lighter workload lately, maybe they're in between moving teams or just in between tickets, that's a great person to reach out to ask for a little bit of pairing time or a little bit of a chance to talk. And if no one can give you that, you might be able to just shadow someone. So stand by their desk, hopefully sit by their desk if you're there for a while, or ask them to share their screen with you on Zoom. And that way, even though it's a little bit less collaborative, you might be able to take down notes and some questions that you can ask them async later. Mutual mentoring is one of my favorite mentoring paradigms. It's also called peer mentoring, and the idea here is that people with similar levels of skill sets can actually mentor one another. And we saw in our cast of characters earlier that one mentee came in with a bunch of front-end experience, the other came in with a bunch of back-end experience. And so if this is a full stack environment, there's some really natural ways for them to help each other out. If you want to find a mutual mentor, if you were hired along someone like Owen and Claire, but if that wasn't the case, try to see if anyone else has joined your team or your organization even in the last year. The people who have joined recently are most likely to be able to empathize with you more effectively because they remember what it was like to figure out all of these issues they were running into and maybe setting up an app or understanding the architecture of your team. And with a mutual mentor, you're not only knowledge sharing, but you're also acting as a united front. So if you run into problems that relate to process issues or documentation issues, there's a particular area of the code that's just very confusing. If you go together and advocate for change, that's so much less daunting than trying to do it by yourself, especially when you're new to an organization. And also you can help each other advance professionally as well by going to each other's managers and saying, hey, Owen was really helpful in learning about this CSS model, or Claire helped me write more performant database queries. I probably don't have to cover this since we've all got a lot of good rubber ducking time at the conference, but for anyone unfamiliar with this term, it's the idea that you take a person or even just an inanimate thing like a little rubber duck, and you explain the problems that you're facing to this rubber duck. And oftentimes you'll find that you just kind of come to the solution while you're explaining the problem. But even if you don't, you've brought someone up to speed, you've shared your knowledge with them, and you can work together to solve that problem. If none of those work, you might be able to find a mentor outside of your work. And this can actually be really handy as well, because it forces you to practice communicating about your problems with someone that doesn't have access to your code and doesn't have a lot of institutional knowledge. There are some formal mentoring programs that exist out in the community, including these here. And if none of those work out for you, engaging with the community on Slack, Discord, organizations like WNB.RB or Ruby for Good can help you meet people that might be able to act as mentors for you. Now this is the weird slide that we almost took out. So things like linters, static analysis, even podcasts and books can give you a lot of great information that can free up the time that you have with your mentors so that you can use that time in different ways that's maybe more specific to your individual apps. At the end of the day, though, linters have somewhat arbitrary cutoffs. They don't have enough context to avoid giving you false negatives or suggestions that might even completely break your code. And if your team doesn't already have linting set up, then the linter might suggest things that will break your team norms. And I suggest that if you start linting, avoid autocorrection or auto-formatting where you can. When you get a violation, look up the reason behind that. It might be some small thing that you disagree with, and if you don't understand it, it's probably not something that you should commit to your code. Now, for us mentors, if we don't have much time to devote to our mentees, there are still some things to do that can help out. And so I really like coming up with a list of resources that I can share with my mentees that include research strategies, how I debug, helpful Slack channels, and I really, really like having a glossary of terms that's specific to my industry. For me, that's EdTech, or my team, my repo. And I also really like having related terms and synonyms in there so that if my mentee goes and searches for one term and doesn't get anything in their first couple of pages of Google, then they can try a new search without having to wait on me to tell them a new search criteria. Now moving on to part 2, our mentor problem is when you feel that your mentee is under-communicating with you. And as mentors, this can be kind of frustrating when you find out that you could have helped your mentee out much earlier or more efficiently, or even just been able to budget or plan your own time better if you had just gotten a Slack message a couple hours or days earlier. But hopefully we can look at a list of things like this and see imposter syndrome, social anxiety, and recognize that there are lots of causes for this phenomenon, and none of them are rooted in anything related to ineptitude or malevolence. And while yes, learning to communicate effectively is probably going to be a big thing that's needed for our mentees' professional growth, we are here as partners. And opportunities for our mentees to help themselves do not preclude us from helping them ourselves. And so we can help foster that personal growth while still providing a safe space to alleviate imposter syndrome and some of the causes of work-based anxiety to get to those really good outcomes that Billy showed earlier.
Let's talk a little bit about psychological safety. So it's come up a couple times in different talks throughout RailsConf this year because it's generally a pretty important idea. It's the belief that we can take interpersonal risk, that we can fail, that we can be wrong, and that's okay, and that's normal, and that's part of the learning process. Problems aren't core to a person. It's a structural problem. Frame it as that. It's not you who did something wrong. It's just part of being a human being and moving through that. So psychological safety is pretty important to mentorship as well. There is a piece from Google called Project Aristotle that it was researching how to make the best team, how to make a team that was cohesive, that performed well. And they did this research project and they ended on a note. And that note came down to psychological safety. Teams that had problems and brought those problems up and felt free to talk about those problems were the successful teams. I personally was a manager for REI, the outdoor equipment company, before I came and started programming. And I was a part of a few different teams. And one of the teams that really succeeded were the ones that were bringing up problems. They were free to talk. They felt like they had a voice, and everybody had a voice. It wasn't just a couple people. So psychological safety goes into culture, and it also relates to mentorship-mentee relationships. But how do we build that up in that relationship? How do we build psychological safety? Framework as a learning problem. Kind of went over that. And also acknowledge your own fallibility. So in terms of fallibility, as a mentor, you can really be, wrong about things. That's totally okay. That's expected. And if you model that for your mentee, they're no longer afraid to be wrong about things. They're okay with bringing something up that may or may not be right, and they're okay getting corrected on it because you are also wrong and you are also fallible. And of course, there's some other ones here about respect and honesty and inviting action, curiosity, and monitoring your responses. But just focus on a couple of these to really build that psychological safety in a mentor-mentee relationship.
Very closely related to this concept of psychological safety is empowerment. So if our mentees don't feel empowered to open up lines of communication with us, we probably won't hear from them that often. But luckily, this is something that we as mentors can help foster. If you have one-on-ones with your mentees, which I highly recommend for reasons we'll cover in a bit, have your mentee lead them. Work with them to create a structure that feels effective and personalized for you, to give them a safe space to learn how to facilitate and explain their work, while also demonstrating that you're building something together. Whenever your mentees run into a new problem, help them document the solution. They'll soon start racking up lots of commits, lots of PRs, and they'll know that they're directly contributing to improving the onboarding process in the future for new team members. Going back to the resources that we put together earlier, when we share these resources with our mentees, that allows them to act more independently, which is a great confidence builder and a source of empowerment. The more that we mentor more individuals, particularly if we stick with the same team or organization over the years, we'll start to recognize patterns. Patterns in code or architecture or documentation that lots of people find very difficult or confusing. And when we find these patterns, we can advocate for them to be changed, advocate for documentation or refactoring, and we also are there able to tell our mentees that these are very common problems that everyone runs into and struggles with. And this is also great for you because it establishes you as a driver of very effective teams. One thing that we often do as mentors is pair with our mentees on their tickets, their tasks, their problems, but it's very important to do the other way around as well and have your mentee pair with you on your problems. They'll get to see that fallibility and that curiosity that Billy spoke to as you're noodling on problems, you're going down the wrong path, you're breaking things, and they'll be able to help you out a lot more than you might expect. Expanding our mentees' networks is huge. This can directly help with that under-mentorship problem if you don't have much bandwidth because they have more people to reach out to. And also, if they run into some kind of question or issue with a particular area of the code and they know a subject matter expert for that area of the code, then they can reach out. They're not having to find who that person is, and if they have social anxiety, then they've already got that relationship built in, which makes it a lot less daunting. We're all terrified of breaking things, right? We don't want to break prod, we don't want to drop the wrong table, we don't want to do anything that feels catastrophic. And so when we pair with our mentees, when these problems do pop up, then they have a lot of tooling and a lot of knowledge about how to fix those things when they go wrong. And they know that they can fix them, which frees up a lot of mental space to focus on what they're actually trying to get done. And I really like having mock emergencies here. So for example, bring down staging one day and pair with your mentee on fixing the problem. It's a much safer, more psychologically safe environment. I also love having my mentees look over my code. They ask lots of great questions, and we're giving them the opportunity to connect different tickets to different parts of the application, different classes and whatnot. And when we have feedback from other engineers on our PRs, then they kind of are up to speed, they can help pair with us on addressing that feedback, or we can just have a conversation on what that feedback might mean. Now, mentees often avoid communication because they're worried about disrupting their mentors, but it's important to remember that we as mentors are responsible for our own time management. And so if we're doing something that requires that we don't pivot, it's a super high priority, we as mentors are in charge of making that call and informing our mentees. So if Owen is worried about disrupting Keisha and waits to reach out to her until he's completely blocked or behind on a deadline, Keisha's ability to manage her own time is actually weakened because now she has a higher priority thing that she hasn't planned for. And I will say that it is inevitable that some mentees will just not feel comfortable reaching out, or they'll get sucked into debugging or research, and that's okay. While we do probably want to flag that as an area of potential growth, we can't expect that growth overnight, and this is where we as mentors can really help alleviate this undercommunication by scheduling regular check-ins with our mentees. And this can be however often or in whatever way that you and your mentee want to do your check-ins. So I've done things like a Zoom check-in right after stand-up every day, or throw something on the calendar that says mentee is responsible for sending me a Slack message with these details about what they're working on or if they're blocked.
When I started out, I was just fresh out of a boot camp, and I was pretty exhausted. I was exhausted of asking for things. I constantly was asking for help on things. I had so many questions. I didn't even know some of the questions that I had to ask. So I asked what questions to ask. I was just tired of asking, can I have a job? And so I reached out to Andy and I said, Andy, what the heck do you get out of this? Like, I just keep asking for things and you keep giving. And it's honestly exhausting to think about what just always taking from you. What do you get out of it?
Well, this is something I can talk about a lot, and I'm going to do my best to keep this brief, and I'm going to fail at that, so I apologize in advance. First off, we all have to communicate about our work, and oftentimes that means communicating very highly technical things to people that don't have much technical knowledge. So we have to make that language very accessible, and getting from A to B can be a pretty big deal in a lot of cases. But when we have our mentees there, they have technical background, but they probably lack context maybe about our particular app or team. Maybe they don't have the level of depth or breadth that we have. And that makes it a lot less daunting because it gives us a bit of a halfway point. When we can translate our highly technical, highly contextual context to a stopping point or a midway point of technical but a little bit less context, that helps us then have a shorter jump to communicate with product, clients, or other stakeholders. Also, as our mentees are learning, we're oftentimes learning along with them. In the past, my mentees have asked me so many great questions that have never occurred to me that have helped me find gaps in my knowledge or recognize implicit biases. I love having mentees or new team members, anyone that rotates onto my team, because it drastically decreases the likelihood that we end up doing something just because we've always done it that way. When a new perspective comes into the group and asks about the why behind certain decisions, that can help you learn about why those decisions were made and articulate them better, which then just goes right back to those cross-functional conversations. And who knows, maybe just that little bit of curiosity will help you find a way to do something that's simpler or better. I'll also give everybody a bit of a hot take. In a readable language like Ruby, I believe that perfect abstractions, perfect naming, perfect code should be highly readable or largely readable to someone even with very low technical background. Now that said, perfect code cannot and will not ever exist, but I do think that we can always get just a little bit closer. And so when we're walking people new to our stack or new to the industry through what we've written, it's really helpful to identify weak points in our naming, our architecture, our patterns, which can directly increase your ability to do those things better, which is a huge driver of professional growth. And it's also just really satisfying to make things better. Of course, when we mentor, we're strengthening our network and safeguarding our careers. How many of us would love to work with a previous mentor again, or would give that mentor a referral? It really establishes your brand as someone that people like to work with. Closely related to that is compensation. In a particular 5-year study done by Sun in the early years of the millennium, mentors and mentees were found to be 6 times more likely to be promoted and over 5 times more likely to advance in pay band than those who did not participate in the mentoring program at all. Also, it's just really satisfying. This is the obvious one. Even if you're not the type of person to get the warm fuzzies just from the act of mentoring itself, it's really cool to watch your mentees go on and do really cool things, like standing with you on a freezing stage at RailsConf. And now, just like we had a slide directly tailored to mentors during our mentee problem, if you as a mentee are struggling with communication, struggling to increase the quantity of your communication, you might be able to increase the quality instead. And a great way to do that is asking better questions. So I'm really a huge fan of templates. So feel free to take any of these bullet points, make them into a template that you can copy paste into Slack. First off, being as specific as possible, including visuals where you can. I love having URLs and screenshots because it helps map back to routes and views and controllers. And I also really like having GIFs with mouse tracking for anything interactive or JavaScripty. How many of us have ever gotten a bug report from a user that just says something like, the site doesn't work? What doesn't work? This is one of our least favorite problems, so let's not contribute to it. Also, severity is huge for time management and triage. If someone doesn't necessarily know how to solve a problem, they might be able to help you escalate it to the people that can. Including a specific ask if you want pairing, documentation, maybe you just need those related terms that we talked about earlier to keep searching for a solution. And of course, mentioning what you've already tried directly saves some time. And now.
All right, our final mutual problem, ineffective mentoring. So it's when mentorship just isn't working. It exists, it's there, you've got a relationship, and sometimes it just doesn't work. So what do we do? I mean, first off, there's a couple things that contribute to it. And under communication is a huge one. You know, maybe there's no responses on Slack for a wide period of time, or maybe you're just not getting the information that you need from somebody else, or maybe it's just not connecting. And that's okay. There's also maybe poorly defined goals, or you haven't really defined your relationship. You don't know how each other's works best. You don't know enough about each other. And slow professional advancement is a big part of that. Unexpected negative performance evaluations can also cause this fear of failure. And of course, just there might be a difference in how you think about things. And that can be challenging. So what do we do? How do we avoid these pitfalls? Well, because I joined coding, and when I joined coding, I learned that there's just so many overly complex frameworks and analogies and basically just a lot of complexity there. I made my own complexity, and I added dirt, grow, harvest. So it starts with a dirt, it starts with the soil, and dirt stands for define interpersonal relationship terms. This is a great first step. Now, in this step, you are going to basically just ask some open-ended questions, have a quick 15-minute meeting. Some people call it define the relationship. I like to overcomplicate things, so it's define interpersonal relationship terms. You know, one of these questions can be, how do you work best? Could be as simple as that. It's just an open-ended question. Async, not async, Slack, video. How do you work best? What, do you want to pair? Do you not want to pair? What are your learning goals? You know, what do you want to get out of this? And then also, what are you good at? I like this one. It really just sets a tone for saying, oh yeah, I am good at this. And maybe the mentee has something that they're really good at. And that's a great opportunity for the mentor to also have a little bit more bi-directional mentorship. And then also, how do you like to receive feedback? I like this one because it's mostly opens yourself up to feedback more than anything else. You know, if I ask this question and someone says, I like direct feedback, that person is really opening themselves up to receiving feedback in a direct manner. Or maybe they're like, I would prefer it to be a little bit more kind and positively framed. I prefer it async. I prefer it written. It just opens that conversation up that says, hey, feedback's okay, and it's just part of it. It's part of the job. And then, of course, check in again. It's important to check in, especially about your relationship and how things are moving, and be honest with that and try to make that a priority to recheck in. And then, of course, anything else. I've gotten some great answers from this one. You know, it could be, hey, I have a kid in the background of my Zoom. And is that going to be okay? Totally. Like, thanks. Now you feel less uncomfortable because your kid's in the background on Zoom, and I'm okay with that. So it's a great topic just to bring up anything else. Next up, we've got GROW, which is the mentorship framework that Andy's going to talk about.
So GROW is a very classic mentoring model. We did not come up with this. And it is also an acronym. The first letter stands for goal, and there are a lot of great frameworks out there for more effective goal setting, including SMART, PURE, and CLEAR. We're not going to get into these because there are lots of articles and resources out there about them, but they're there for you if you need them. Next up, reality is where your mentee is currently at. Has any progress already been made? Are there any other goals that might be complementary or conflicting? Is there anything in the organization that's coming on that might affect how things are going? O is options or obstacles, depending on what source you read, and both are important. As mentor, this is where we can act as curious facilitators for our mentees to find their way forward rather than prescribing a way forward for them. And this directly lines up with the goal we mentioned earlier about mentee empowerment. And the last letter stands for will or way forward, and it's my favorite of the four when I'm acting as a mentor. And this is how your mentee will stay motivated. What can you do to keep them accountable so they continue to move forward under their own power, but with your support? The academic that coined the term psychological safety was a woman named Dr. Amy Edmondson. She did a really great TEDx talk a couple years ago. It's only 11 minutes long, very easy to get through. And there was one point in the talk where she had a chart with psychological safety on one axis and accountability and motivation on the other. And for her, the best place you can be to continue moving forward is what she calls the learning zone, with high psych safety and high accountability and motivation. And that's directly related to this will or way forward and what we can help out our mentees with as mentors. And when we keep our mentees accountable and motivated, that doesn't mean that we're driving them to work hard or work long hours. Instead, it means that while they're working hard, heads down, knocking out tickets, maybe they're writing a paper on whatever the heck this is in JavaScript at any given time, we can make sure that we're keeping an eye on the big picture for them, keeping track of where they're at with those goals that they've already set, and making sure that they're not burning out and feeling excited about where they're at on their journey and where they have yet to go.
All right, so finally we've got Harvest. Harvest is the last piece of the puzzle. It's recognize your achievements. It's also, wait for it, hone assertiveness and resourcefulness to validate efforts for success in transition. Yeah. What does that mean? Great question. Can I have a promotion? Be one of those people in the statistics that uses mentorship to get into a management position, be an underrepresented population that is becoming a manager and now has leadership sway. So harvest what you've learned in your mentorship-mentee relationship and reap the success of it. And if you're wondering where I got this from, it was simply ChatGPT. It's pretty cool. It has the have confidence to ask for a promotion, and it gave me harvest, hone assertiveness and resourcefulness to validate efforts for success and transition. Thank you, ChatGPT. Finally, we've got share. Share is the last piece. I like to throw it in there. Surprise, let's share. Let's also share out our knowledge. I was a scholar. I look forward to being I look forward to being on the other end of that spectrum. I look forward to being a guide here. I look forward to sharing out and building up the community. So Matt's is nice, so we are nice. And let's just quick touch on learning styles. It's the last piece that really is an underlying piece that gets into differences in personalities. You're going to have a different person who's going to be your mentee, or you're going to have a different person who's going to be your mentor. Person A doesn't equal person B. And so learning models just say, hey, people are different, they learn differently. And just keep that in mind. I'm just going to glaze through this, but you've probably seen this before. It's VARK. It's visual, auditory, reading, writing, kinesthetic. All different ways that you can learn. Some people are multiple of them. Some people are not. I'm mostly just kinesthetic. I like trial and error. And then you also have Gregoric mind styles. You can see here that we've just got a few different types: perception and ordering, concrete, sequential, random. what does this all mean? It just, you don't need to necessarily know exactly what it means. It just means that people are different. And there you are. Now, how did this affect mine and Andy's relationship? We had a good moment that Andy's going to talk about a little bit, actually.
So about a year ago, I was putting together a workshop based on the Gilded Rose Kata. For anyone who doesn't know the Gilded Rose, Sandy Metz did an absolutely legendary talk called All the Little Things at a RailsConf a couple of years ago. It's basically a refactoring exercise where you're meant to take some pretty gnarly code, make it more readable, make it more extensible. And I really, really love this problem because it's so open-ended. There are so many patterns you can apply and ways you can solve it. And Billy was kind enough to help me prep for this workshop. After we prepped, we ended up running through it together as kind of a cross between a mock interview and a pairing session. And so Billy starts moving along. He's making great progress. But I thought, the tactic that he's trying doesn't really make sense to me. It seems like he's trying to keep this whole gigantic thing in his head at once. In the Gilded Rose, it's a fantasy shop with tons of different pieces of inventory that all of their prices change at different rates over time. And so I suggested that we switch tactics and only work on one item in the shop at a time. And to phrase it in modern parlance, this killed the vibe. A couple days later, as I was geeking out about finally getting into the field of ed tech that I'd wanted to get into for years, Billy sent me a PDF saying, hey, this is kind of education related, covering some learning styles, including another model, the Felder-Silverman model. And it's kind of like the Gregorek model that Billy covered in that it's got a bunch of different dimensions where it's like A or B, and one of those dimensions is sequential versus global learning. And so I actually looked back through our Slack messages and I discovered one, Billy and I apparently always use the same profile pictures for everything. And two, this light bulb moment where I realized that I'm really, really sequential. I like things broken down into tiny pieces and going from thing A to thing B to thing C. But Billy was naturally moving in this very global fashion where he was trying to connect everything together. And had I had this information earlier, I might have been able to realize what was going on and avoid derailing the exercise like I did. But going back to something cool, psychological safety, it was nice to look back at this conversation and realize that we both must have felt pretty psychologically safe. I was able to learn from Billy and my own mistakes, and Billy was able to support me through that, and he didn't feel like he had to backtrack or apologize or make me feel any better, but we both just got to show up and benefit from the experience. Now, just like those learning styles, if you want to have more effective mentorship, it can be helpful to know about how to mentor more effectively. And we already covered GROW, very classic one. We're going to cover one more topic to close out the talk, ZPD. This is the zone of proximal development. And this is a concept in the field of educational psychology that refers to the area in which you as an individual need some help to accomplish a task of a certain difficulty. You can already accomplish easier things. And on the flip side, there are more difficult things that you can't accomplish even with help. That said, I want to be clear that there's no expectation around time with this concept of ZPD. There's no notion that your ZPD will move at a particular rate or even a predictable rate. And also, as software developers, we have a lot of different skills, so we'll have a lot of these different zones. For example, the Ruby zone, the CSS zone, the JavaScript zone, etc. And I really like this concept because I find it so applicable to the work that we do. If mentee and mentor can get a sense of where the zones of proximal development are for their mentees, they can directly tie that into sprint planning. And this has a lot of advantages, including meaning that your mentee is actively involved in the sprint planning. For the mentee, we can give them a mixture of work that is within their zone of proximal development. This is something that you'll maybe be pairing with them on if you're a mentor, but then they'll also be able to do things that they can work on independently, which is really great for that confidence building and feeling of empowerment. And as for our mentors, you'll hopefully have a better sense of what you're going to be pairing with your mentee on during your current sprint, which means that you can budget and plan your own time a lot more effectively and know which tickets you'll be able to knock out.
All right, so we talked a lot about a lot of different frameworks. And maybe you got some of it, maybe you didn't. That's totally okay. We've got some sources. We'll make the slides available. You can do your own research if this is a topic of interest to you, which I hope it is because you're here right now. And further topics to think about and study is maybe some educational psychology, some instructional theory, All great topics just to kind of dive into mentorship a little bit further.
More here. And last, this is kind of a little experimental thing. We've both been in the situation where we've been to a talk, we've really liked it, and we thought, wow, the speaker seems really cool, but we don't necessarily have a great follow-up topic. And so we've provided some of those for you. I think you can kind of tell which one of us has their manager in the office, because Billy's like, hey, talk to me about work stuff. And I'm like, hey, talk to me about Star Wars. But yeah, if you guys want to chat with us about the talk, feel free to come and find us, but also feel free to chat with us about any of these topics as well. And so we are perfectly at time. So we'll probably free up the stage, but we'll linger around here for a bit if anybody wants to come chat or ask us any questions. So thank you all very much for coming.